Alright, 232-209 Class 3 brake line train continuity inspection. Terminal learning objective. Upon completion of the module, the student will be able to describe and identify, regulate, and demonstrate and proceed with the task provided with the test brakes on the train brake system when configuration of the train changed in certain ways. 1. The train brake shall be changed to the pressure which the train will be operated, and the pressure of the rear of the train shall not be less than 60 psi as indicated with the rear train accurate end device. The brakes of the rear car of the train shall apply with a response of the 20 psi brake service to production and shall remain applied until the release initiated by controlling locomotive. 3. When the release is initiated with the brakes on the rear car of the train shall be inspected to verify that it did release. 4. Before proceeding with the operator of the train shall know that the brake pressure at the rear of the freight train is being restored. On-the-job learning, on-the-job training, evaluation, training rules, responsibility, classroom, online, on-job. The designated instructor serves the overall coordinator with the specific training program, with the primary responsible for the acting as principal point of contact with the process, and ensure the process is properly implemented, ensuring that all trainees, qualified personnel involved with the process have received hard hats, received hard or electronic copies of specific CFR procedure checklists. Provide guidance with both the trained qualified person with the process once they have received the OJT program. Ensure that the trainees have access to all supporting publications listed within the OJT program. Answer any of the questions from related material, videos, or OJT. Ensure that the trainee has successfully completed all safety-related tasks, becoming the qualified manager for the occupational strategy and category. Qualified person, sometimes referred to as the peer trainer in reserve, is the mentor coach for the trainees. Qualified person must be qualified with the duty to communicate with the trainees, ensure OJT is properly administered throughout the process. Qualified personnel will also provide briefings at the beginning of each day with regard to the specific task focused on during the day. Trainee must perform the OJT under the direct on-site observation of any qualified personnel, provided with the qualified personnel has been provided with the circumstances capable of intervening if unsafe to act with non-compliance with federal railroad safety law, regulations, or orders observed. However, the trainee must demonstrate OJT performance, proficiency, and satisfaction designated instructor to become qualified member of an occupational category or subcategory. Designated instructor qualified person can be the same person. The trainee/student, new hire, or existing employee have the responsibility of paying close attention for the qualified person at OJT with the taking advantage of the knowledge, experience he or she has to offer. Taking progress for the OJT essential for the training responsibility. Trainees should be aware of and abide the following. The designated instructor, any qualified person, will provide practical information via the requirements of the responsibility with assigned duties. Trainees are responsible for completing any narrative self-study assignments outside of the scope of the OJT program. Additional assignments with an integral part of the training experience must be completed before being deemed qualified by employer. To gain the maximum benefit of the OJT experience, trainees must remain alert, involved with the training activity, to ask questions, learn the feedback, take notes to apply a previous lesson, complete all required assignments before familiar with comply with the FRA railroad safety rules, other procedures maintained with addition of the employment or employer. Develop, maintain learning attitude for the OJT experience. If the designated with much more with the following qualified person around with the watching he or she does the training must take an active role OJT, thoroughly engage with the various jobs that outline with the OJT program. Sit with the qualified person. Here you give it a try with a remember while process for the OJT program. Trainees have opportunity to learn, skill, to develop knowledge, and adapt with the work habit of routines to last throughout the railroad career. Tracking documentation OJT progress is essential process step. Guidelines on the job training program. Coordinator and administrator each for the OJT day and with the OJT should focus on one of the major duties of the OJT program extent possible. One task has been selected, but there should be both an initial brief of the task completed at the beginning and the end of each day. The purpose of the briefing is to go through the day's activities and focus to each of the tasks associated with the task selected. Successful completion or repetition of the task should be documented with a task checklist. Sometimes tasks may require multiple successful demonstrations to show mastery. There's no required sequential order of the completing OJT as associated with any of the tasks attempted for the priorities. Any tab throughout OJT focus particular tasks. Anticipated tasks standards will actually be accomplished based on the available training opportunities, railroad work priorities, and other local consideration. Task 2. Apply brake inspection testing requirements. Performance tasks. Table task 2.1. Demonstrate understanding of the Class 2 freight air brake test must be performed. condition, tools, and equipment documents given an opportunity to read with the Title 489 CFR 232.209 to assist in level, at least 5 Class 3 freight air brake tests where with a designated instructor qualified person will steer in completeness accuracy for these 3 separate set inspections at least 95% any of the non-compliant conditions noted with the designated instructor qualified person. Non-compliant conditions may include but not limited to the following: improper brake pressure, inoperative brake, excessive brake pipe leakage, excessive airflow, improper gradient brake rigging, fouling, excessive piston travel, insufficient piston travel to brake efficiency, brake connection rod pins worn, missing brake shoes, warning, missing brake hose worn, brake pipe insecure, slack adjuster inappropriate if the clip angle or cutout cot not properly positioned, retainer valve not properly positioned, documentation recorded in Class 1 brake test missing, required information incomplete, 215 defects. And shows a Title 49, 232, 211 Class 3 brake test training line, continuity task item, reference, work, signature, comments, overall completion date, dated, designated instruction name, task charge, brake pressure, reference 232, 211B1, task 20 pound PSI, brake reduction, 232, 211B2, 20 PSI, release, 232, 211B3, brake pipe increase, 232, 11B4, 20 PSI, release. And alright, 232, year 2007, Class 1A brake test for 1,000-mile inspection. Separate provided in 232, 213, each train shall receive the Class 1 brake test performed by a qualified person for the defined in 232.5 of the location no more than 1,000 miles from the point where the area of the car or train. Last street of the Class 1, Class 1A brake test for the most street of the car with the block of cars train shall determine the location for the test. Class 1 brake test shall consist of the following task requirements: brake pipe leakage not exceeding 5 psi per minute, airflow should not exceed 60 cubic feet per minute. Brake pipe leakage test, airflow method testing shall be conducted in pursuit of the requirements contained in 232.205C1. Inspector shall position him or herself at the taking position on each side of the car. Sometime during the inspection process, shall be able to examine the observer the function of all moving part of the brake system on each car in order to make determination. Inspection required. Inspection 3 for the air brake test. The air brake system shall be determined with the pressure with the train with the operating with the pressure rear of the train shall be within 15 psi. 15 psi pressure at which the train will be operated not less than 75 psi indicated by the accurate gauge engine of the train device rear end of the train. 4. The brakes on each of the cars shall apply with the response to the 20 psi brake pipe. Surface the reduction shall remain applied until the release initiated with the controlling locomotive car found with the brakes fail to apply remain applied with the retest to remain in the train with a retest conducted prescribed in 232.205C4. Otherwise defective equipment that may not only be moved pursuant with the provisions contained in 232.15 if the applicable. 5. Of the brake ring should be properly secured and shall not bind foul with the otherwise adversely affect the operation of the brake system. 6. All of the parts of the brake shall be properly secured. C. A railroad shall designate location Class 1A brake test for the perform of the railroad shall furnish for the Federal Railroad Administration. Upon the present description, each for the location designated of the railroad shall notify the FRA Associated Administrator, Safety and Reading in 30 days prior to the change of the location designated with the test for the test inspection. Failure to comply with the Class 1A brake test on train location designated pursuant to this paragraph constitutes the failure to perform Class 1A brake test if the train is due to such for the test at the location. In the event of an emergency, alter for the normal train operations of the derailment and other unusual circumstances adversely with the safety of the operation of the railroad is not required to provide a written notification change of the location where the Class 1 brake test is performed. Location with the railroad listed designated as performing the Class 1 brake test. Private of the railroad notified of the FRA Associated Administrative Safety pertaining with the FRA Regional Administrator within 24 hours after the designation has been changed. Reason and for the change. Alright, 232.209 Class 2 brake test intermediate inspection. At location other than the initial terminal with the Class 2 brake test shall be qualified person to define in 232.5 with the following equipment when added to the train. Each of the car, solid block of the car is defined in 232.5 has not previously received the Class 1 brake test or has been off air for more than 4 hours. Each solid block of the cars with the 232.5 is compromised with the cars from more than one previous train. And 2, except as provided in paragraph 84 with the section of each of the block of the cars compromised with the car with the only previously train with the car with which have not remained consciously consecutively coupled together with the train line remaining connected since they are being removed from the previously train with the solid block of cars considered to have remained continuously consecutively coupled together with the train line remaining connected since being removed from the previous train. It has been changed only by removing the defective equipment. For each solid block of the cars compromised with the cars single with the previous train with the cars of which were required separately with the multiple solid blocks cars due to the specs and tracking constraint with a particular location when removed with the previous train. If they are not added the same relative to the order when removed from the previous train with the cars, each with the multiple block of the cars have not remained continuously consecutively coupled together with the train line remaining connected except for the removal of the defective equipment. B. A Class 2 brake test shall consist of the following task requirements. Brake leakage shall not exceed 5 psi per minute. Airflow should not exceed 60 cubic feet per minute. With the brake pipe leakage test with the airflow method should be conducted for the entire train pursuant to the requirement contained in 232.205C1. The air brake shall be determined with the pressure with which the train will be operated. With the pressure over the rear of the train shall be within 15 psi pressure at which the train will be operated, not less than 75 psi, indicated with the accurate gauge end of the train device for the rear of the end of the train. Brake pipe, the brakes on each car shall have the train with the rear of the car of the train shall be the inspection should apply with the response with the 20 psi brake pipes over the production remain applied until the release is initiated with the controlling locomotive of the car found with the brakes fail to apply with the remain applied with the retest with the remain if the train is retest with conducted as prescribed in 232.205C4. Otherwise the defective equipment may only be pursuant to provision 232.15 if applicable. When relief is initiated with the brakes of each of the car of the train with the rear of the car of the train shall be inspected and verified with the release. This may be performed by the roll-by inspection of the brake lease performed with the train speed not exceeding 10 miles an hour with a qualified personnel performing. Roll-by inspection shall communicate with the result of the inspection operator of the train before the train proceeds with the operator of the train shall know with the brake pipe pressure at the rear of the train is being restored. See alternatively with the rear brake application release portion of the test of the operation of the train shall be determined with the brake pipe pressure of the train is reduced to indicate with the rear car gauge for the end of the train telemetry device for the brake pipe pressure of the train restored with the indicate with the rear car gauge for the end of the telemetry the device end of the telemetry device if complied with any of the test requirement and end of this part of the brake pipe pressure for the train is reduced means pressure reduction with at least 5 psi for the phrase of the brake pipe pressure for the train is being restored means with the pressure increased with at least 55 psi if the electronic communication link between the controlling locomotive and remotely controlled locomotive attached to the rear end of the car train is utilized to determine the brake pipe pressure for the restored for the operator of the train shall notify the air brake function by the remotely controlled locomotive. Each of the solid cars with the shall be received with the Class 2 brake pursuant with the section which will add with the train shall receive with the Class 1 brake tip with the next 4 location and facilities available for performing such tests. Alright, 232.211, the Class 3 brake test testing. Train continue with the inspection. Class 3 brake test shall be performed with a train qualified person is defined with 232.5 of the test of the train brakes if the configuration of the train changed in certain ways. In particular, Class 3 brake test shall be tested, shall perform a location where any of the following chain with the configuration of the train occur. When a locomotive or caboose is changed in the car or block with it removed from the train with the consistency otherwise remaining intact. At the point of the initial terminal train with the wear of the car solid block of the cars is compromised with the one over the previous train with which have remained consistently consecutively coupled together with train line remaining connected other than for removing defective equipment since being removed from its previous train with the previously received. Class 1 brake test has not been off for more than 4 hours as added to the train. For the other point over the initial terminal train with a solid block with the cars compromised with the previous train with it as added with the train provided with a solid block of the cars required separately with the multiple solid blocks of cars due to space tracking constraint with a particular location when moved from the previous train when the cars have previously received with the Class 1 brake tests that have not been off for more than 4 hours. Each of the multiple block cars have remained continuously consecutively coupled together with the train line connected except for the removal of the defective equipment. Furthermore, the multiple solid block of the cars must be added to the train in the same relative order, no reclassification when removed from the previous train except for the removal of the defective equipment. Or 5. At the point of the other initial terminal with the train with the car and solid block of the cars received Class 1, Class 2 brake test from prior to being added with the train that has been off of the air for more than 4 hours added to the train. B. A Class 3 brake test shall consider the following tasks. Requirement of the train brake shift and be charged for the pressure of the width of the train with the operated pressure of the remaining train shall not be less than 60 psi. The indicator of the rear of the train, accurate gauge end of the train device. Brake for the rear car of the train shall apply with the respond with 20 psi brake pipes over the production class apply with the relief of the initiative of the control locomotive. When release initiative of the brakes on the rear car of the train shall be inspected to verify that it did release. And 4. Before proceeding with the operator of the train shall know that the brake pressure over the rear of the freight train is being restored. C. With an alternative of the rear car brake application release portion of the test that shall be determined whether the brake pipe pressure of the train is being reduced to indicate with the rear car gauge end of the telemetry device that the brake pipe pressure of the train is being restored to indicate with the rear car gauge end of the train telemetry device. If the electronic radio communication link between the control locomotive and the remotely controlled locomotive tab of the rear end of the train is utilized to determine the brake pipe pressure is being restored, but the operator of the train shall know that the air brake function and of the remotely controlled locomotive. D. When a continuity brake test is broken and interrupted with the train consists of the otherwise remaining unchanged, but it is determined if the brake pipe pressure of the train is being restored as indicated by rear car gauge end of the train device prior to proceeding. In the absence of the accurate rear car gauge end of the train telemetry device determined whether the brakes of the rear car of the train apply with relief of the response air pressure change with the controlling locomotive. 232-213 extended haul trains. A railroad may be permitted to move a train not exceeding 1,500 miles between brake tests and with an inspection. Railroad designated with the train extended with a haul train in order to railroad designated with the train as extended with haul train and the following requirements must be met. Railroad must designate with the train written FRA Associated Administration for safety that this designation must include the train identification symbol, identification location where the extended haul trains will originate. In description of the trains will be operated extended with the haul trains of those location origination destination points for the train with the types of equipment will haul. The locations where all training brake with the mechanical inspection testing will be performed. 2. Class 1 pursuant with the 232-205 shall be performed with the initial terminal over the train by with a qualified mechanical inspector with the 232-5. Freight car inspection pursuant with the Part 215 with the chapter shall be performed with the initial terminal for over the train and shall be performed by the inspector designated with the 215-11 of the chapter. 4. All the cars having the condition not in compliance with the Part 215 with the chapter initial term for the train which shall be either repaired or removed from the train except for the car developing such condition en route with no car shall be provided moved pursuant to the provision 215-9 of the chapter of the train. 5. The train shall have no more than one pickup, the one set out en route except for the set out defective of the equipment and pursuant with the requirements for this chapter. Cars added to the 1. Cars added with the turn route which shall be inspected with the pursuant with the requirements contained in the paragraph of the A2 through A5 of the section location where they are added to the train. 2. For the car set with the train en route shall be inspected with the pursuant with the requirements contained in the paragraph of A6 of the section location where they are set out on the train. 6. In order to the extent of the haul train to proceed with beyond 1,500 miles, the following requirements shall be met, but the train will move with 1,000 miles left of the location before receive the Class 1 brake test or over the reach destination Class 1 brake test. Class 1A brake test, the reach designation Class 1 brake test shall be conducted pursuant with the 232-205 with the pursuant with 100% of the effect of the operative brake with the inbound inspection required with the paragraph 86. The selection may be used to meet with the requirement provided that encompasses with all the inspection and elements contained in the 232-205. 2. The train moved greater than 1,000 miles of the location without another brake inspection. Train must identify the extent of the haul of train with the movement that shall meet with the requirements contained paragraphs A1 through A7. Such train shall receive the Class 1 brake test to do it in 232-205 with a qualified mechanical inspection to ensure the 100% of the effect of the operative brake with a freight car inspection pursuant Part 215 chapter of the inspector designated 215-11 chapter over the cars contained with non-compliant conditions under Part 215 with the chapter shall either be repaired or removed from the train with the inbound inspection required in paragraph A6 for the section may be used with the inspection requirements that are provided encompassed for the inspection elements contained in paragraph A2 through A4 of this section. 7. The FRA inspector shall have a physical access to the visual observe the brake and freight car inspection test required in the inspection. B. Failure to comply with any of the requirements required in paragraph A of this section will be considered improper to move with a designated priority train with the appropriate civil penalties may be assessed with the outline in paragraph A of the furthermore, FRA Associated Administrator Safety may revoke the railroad's ability to designate any of all the trains extended haul for repeated willful non-compliance with any of the requirements contained in the sections. If the determination will be made in writing, we'll see the basis for such action. 232-217 train brake test conducted in using yard air. When the train air brake system is stuffed with the yard air source, the engineer brake valve is suitable for the test shall be deceived to provide increase the production brake pipe air pressure at the same slower rate as the engineer's brake valve. Yard air test device must be conducted at any of the train block of the cars when nearest to the controlling locomotive. However, the railroad adopts comply with the written procedure to ensure that the potential overall overcharge condition with the train brake system are avoided. The yard air test device may be connected to other than and nearest to the controlling locomotive. Except provided in this section, when C is provided in the section, yard air with the train brake system must be charged, tested, and prescribed in the 232.205C. When practical, should be kept charged until the road motive power is coupled with the train. After the Class 3 brakes test should be performed and is prescribed in 232.211. If the cars are off the air for more than 4 hours, the car should be retested in accordance with 232.205C through F. To a minimum yard air pressure shall be 60 psi into the block air cars for the opposite from the yard test device shall be within 15 psi regulator valve setting of the yard test device. Air pressure for the yard test device is less than 80 psi. Then the brake pipe leakage airflow test should be conducted with the operating pressure for the train when locomotives are attached in accordance with the 232.205C1. Mechanical yard air test device gauges should be calibrated every 92 days. Electronic yard test device gauges should be calibrated annually. Mechanical electronic yard air test device gauges should be calibrated so they are accurate within 3 positive and negative 3 psi. If you the test train with the yard air test device, any yard test equipment shall accurate and function as intended. 219 double heading helper services. When more than one locomotive is attached to the train with the engineer controlled locomotive shall operate with the brakes in case of the brake becomes necessary for the controlling locomotive to give up the control of the train to short with the destination when the train Class 3 brake test pursuant in 232.211 shall be made to ensure that the brakes are operative with the automatic brake valve of the locomotive taking control of the train. B. When one or more of the helper locomotives are played with the train, visual inspection should be made each with the helper and brake system will determine whether the brake system operates in 10 with the respond with a 20 psi reduction, 10 with the control locomotive with the train, helper locomotive with the inoperative or ineffective. Brakes should be repaired prior with the use of the remove from the train. If the helper utilized with a help link device, similar technology locomotive device shall be equipped with the designated main and its valve of the locomotive engineer should be notified with a single alarm, any lawful communication between the device and the two ends of the device, and if the train device is more than 25 seconds. 2. A method of the reset of the device for the provided with the cab for the helper locomotive with the operator with the engineer usual position during the operation locomotive. Alternatively, the helper locomotive with the device shall be equipped with the means to automatically reset the device, provided with the automatic reset occur within a period of time permitted with the manual reset with the device. The device shall be tested accuracy with the calibrated with the necessary according to the manufacturer specification procedures. Every 365 days shall include a test radio frequency modulation with the device. A legal record of the date, location, last test, or calibration shall be maintained with the device. Alright, overview. The train complying with the Title 49 CFR 243 training qualification oversight of the safety railroad employees. This is several components of the purpose of regulation ensure that the proper person employed with the railroad or contract with the training with the qualified comply with any relevant federal safety laws, regulation, orders of the bills, any relevant rule of the procedure probably gave with the implement of the federal railroad safety laws and regulation, or if the person engaged in this student will give it an access to the material of the website. He or she will be able to download written copy of the regulation, retain them from the future draft of the other documents relevant to the subject, may provide with the video segments will with the representative of the demonstrate with the task, proceed with the short test will be given a measure of retention on the job train with the document specified with the task checklist guide with the monitoring documentation OJT with the provide with the railroad contract with the respond with the giving access online with the portion monitoring students' progress with the sign with the design indicator of the training acted as a mentor with the swift to go when question or addition of the designated instructor will ensure that the student is assigned with a qualified person to oversee the complete on-the-job training final sign-off when the student has achieved the competency for the performed test without oversight with the designated instructor or other qualified personnel. Alright, making tracks media limited liability company Title 49 CFR 243 training step-by-step with instruction download read retain reference for the overview CFR regulation OJT instruction any other document watch a short video take the test and then successful completion. If there's OJT GT the checklist the detailed list of OJT work with a trainer with a qualified person experience work to complete with the OG training. Once you've mastered the text of the task, you enter for the training supervisor assignment. The OJT set with checking listing that you've now qualified the test and associated regulation. Add with your training record information. If you have any questions, contact your designated instructor. And that was Class 1, Class 2, Class 3 brake test, but I got it off of Making Tracks Media, Limited Liability Company, as I paid for the course, and so that was Class 3 continuity tests, and I'm going to post it to YouTube.